So everyone and their sister now does a podcast. In fact, I'm thinking that it won't be long, then, people will be saying, what? You don't have a podcast? So hey, why not us? We're cool. We have something to say, right? We think we do. So we've been married 43 years. We've been a couple almost 45. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting about our story in becoming a couple is our whole life, our whole marriage, and even how we dated and courted back in that day was about following Jesus. And people could use the word radically. I think that's a fair term. We both started out in inner city ministry in Chicago, right? Mm-hmm. And then we've been 20 years in Thailand and kind of working for, dealing with the poor and broken. And that's the...
What did you say we started out doing what?
Inner city ministry? Where were we?
You said loving Jesus or following?
Oh, following. I don't know.
Following Jesus. I just want to just kind of clarify. I think we really, from the beginning, always seen ourselves as serving other people, serving people for
living
God.
For others.
Yes.
Orienting our lives around
what you would call ministry,
right.
Or around, that kind of reaching out into other people's lives.
Right.
Yeah.
And so some choices that have certainly some mistakes in that, many mistakes and kind of muddling along in doing that. But that's been our focus again for these 45-ish years.
Yes, I think that's what that was our first attraction too when we met.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because we started out, we were both met in context of ministry. So that was kind of interesting too.
Right. So let's tell our stories a little bit.
Okay.
And we're telling each other, we already know a little bit, but maybe we can find a detail or two that the other doesn't know. All right. That whole thing, after so many years, what do you have to talk about? Right. Mm-hmm. But that's always fun. So you first, how did you get oriented this direction, wanting to follow Jesus to the poor and broken? Can I put it that way?
Well, I grew up in Argentina. My parents were missionaries. And so we were always starting new things, reaching out into people's lives, finding people who were looking for more, looking for better, for something more in their own lives. And so my parents did end up working a lot with poor too, although it wasn't what they were.
It wasn't the focus, but they exist.
That happened.
Yeah.
It happened naturally.
It was a lower to middle class part of Argentina. Was that fair?
It was. Yeah. I mean, everything was there, but those were the ones that they were reaching into their lives. Yes.
Okay. So
anyway, then I came to Wheaton and for college, and I wanted to do ministry. That was just like they had a ministry program, and I was like, okay, I want to do this. Yeah. It wasn't. I don't even think I thought about it for very long. They have
off-campus stuff.
They have off-campus stuff. So I started out doing some tutoring stuff. I didn't really like that. We got on a big bus with a whole bunch of other students, and it felt very, what's the word? It felt like it wasn't mine. Okay. I wanted something smaller. I wanted something that was more, with more connections.
Yeah. Okay.
I felt kind of disconnected doing that. And I don't even remember the kid that I tutored. I enjoyed tutoring the child because I liked doing that kind of stuff. But I knew it wasn't where I wanted to stay.
Okay. So.
At the same time, I started I took an abnormal psych class, and I started reading about all the mentally ill people and thought, this is not for real. They're not really people who have hallucinations and all that. To me, that was just, I'd probably seen it somewhere on the street, or I've seen people talking, but I just never really processed that in any kind of way. So then I thought, well, I'm a psychology major, and I think I want to work with people who have psychological problems, and maybe I should go meet a few. And at the same time that I was having all those thoughts, I met a woman, another classmate, who was looking into starting a ministry in what do they call them? Halfway houses for mentally ill chronics. Just prior to
Chronic
us,
schizophrenia, and so forth.
just prior to us going to college, was when all the people who had been institutionalized were getting. Finally, they had medications to help them with
the
all their
60s and
stuff.
70s. It started in the 60s.
So they were starting to like send people who were chronically mentally ill back into communities.
A lot of people on Thorazine.
Yes.
Yes.
And a lot of people who really had never lived independently, like for years and years had never lived independently. So they had an intermediate care facility, and we started going there.
Yeah.
And I met some people that were mentally ill, lots of people who were mentally ill, and I really liked it. It was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Well, there was a little bit of intimidation too, wasn't there? I mean, kind of.
Yeah, there were so many
People
stories.
talking to themselves and inappropriate flat FX.
Oh yeah, no, it was quite a experience. Yeah. That's when I met Joe, and he was a big Polish man who loved the ladies, and he was a little bit intimidating just because he was big and he was mentally ill, and he was very friendly. So that was a fun experience.
Yeah.
Like
He would stand by the door a lot, didn't he?
he would wait for us. He really loved that we
by
came.
the door and
I don't know if he always
had an accent, right?
a strong Polish accent.
Yes, and then with the low voice and hello.
Yeah, he was bald.
Give me a kiss.
Yeah. He was actually very adorable. But I did meet him once on the back stairs when I was by myself, and he was intimidating. I was a little scared and thinking to myself, maybe I shouldn't be wandering around this place by myself. But when I was that age, I just thought that nothing could hurt me. I was such a teenager as far as just not feeling vulnerable, not being afraid.
Won't happen to me.
Won't happen.
Okay, but so compared with that tutoring, you were on a bus with a lot of people, but it didn't feel like yours, and then you started.
Oh yeah, I just owned it. I owned it. I loved it. I would come home. They had incense and everybody smoked. This was like back when everybody smoked in front of you.
Yeah.
And so I would, and they had an incense worship there.
Oh, well, the people would work there and come back with incense on their clothes.
Yeah, so it was just like really stinky, smelly. Yeah. And so I would come home and just take all my clothes off and jump in the shower and put all my clothes in a plastic bag in my laundry.
Tobacco and incense. Yeah, it was quite I ended up working there too later.
And my roommate told me, my roommate said to me, Judy, you belong there. You belong in Uptown.
All right.
So that was a lot of the pull for me too. I was all of a sudden with all the displays.
Your roommate said this too.
Yes, she said you are so happy when you come back from Uptown.
Oh.
So I was a different person.
Right.
So I really did.
And how long did that transition from intimidation to feeling at home take?
It wasn't. I don't remember it being long.
Oh, okay.
Leading Bible studies was tricky because sometimes they would tell you they were Jesus Christ, or they would tell you they were the mother of Mary. And so then you're like, okay, now how do we bring that back?
Yeah.
How do we talk about scripture, and what are they really getting from this? And I didn't know. I didn't know what they were getting from my Bible studies and stuff.
I remember on the third floor, there was a woman, I don't know if she was in your Bible studies at all. That's when I worked there. There was a woman who would sit in a chair by her door of her room and talk, and you'd hear her talking. And she wasn't one of my particular clients, so I more heard about this through other workers. They said, yeah, she's doing world work. She believes that she's taking care of the world. Right? Yeah. She's sitting there and kind of managing what's going on in the world. And I'm thinking, what if that's really true?
No, there's so many really amazing stories.
Yeah. So cool stuff. I had a similar experience, and I grew up Christian home, rural, and went to Wheaton after deciding not to become an engineer like my uncle. And was excited that I could go to a church that would be more more interesting, better music and preaching and stuff than the little country church I grew up in. And I found out after a few weeks, or I decided that it was shallow. It was interesting. So I started asking my friends, and then did tutoring as well, one term. And remember this kid, white poor kid in the Humboldt Park area of Chicago. Inner City Impact was the ministry, and slow learner and all that. And I couldn't, I didn't know what I was doing. And so I asked my sister, is there a church? I'm thinking, well, let's go further. Okay. And so that was interesting too. I was like scared of the inner city, go down there and.
Oh yeah, you were a farm boy.
Yeah, which was more dangerous actually, but that's another story. Scared of the inner city but drawn, right? And she had known another student who had interned with Jim Queen, who was the founding pastor of Uptown Baptist Church in the 70s. And we went there in the fall of 77, a friend group, Jane and I, my sister, and a couple others. And here's this little storefront on 4429 North Broadway. I just remember the address.
Okay.
4429 North Broadway, between Montrose and Wilson. There's a Salvation Army up the street, about half a block, adult bookstore across the way. Uptown was quite the metropolis of brokenness.
Yeah, now
right?
the Target, right?
They had a Black Lung Association, remember?
Right.
And the Black Lung, they had the hillbilly folks, we called them affectionately American Indian Center.
Right, they're Native Americans.
And the multi-ethnicity was just getting started with, like, the Hmong refugees were coming.
There were a whole pile of Puerto Ricans too.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Puerto Ricans and African Americans, and a lot of them very mixed too. A lot of biracial kids. It was a very interesting area. Very.
And lots of crazy people, because that's where all these halfway, that was, by the way, right? The same neighborhood where the halfway house that you worked in was in that neighborhood, which is how we got connected.
Right.
Okay.
Right. We were like just 3 or 4 blocks from each other.
Right. Because I ended up, we went to this church, again, this little storefront, and it was the opposite of what I was looking for in terms of church, right? It was not entertaining. It was, there was a Moody student who had a classical guitar, and he kind of played the melody kind of with some songs. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't like the music I was looking for. And then we sat down with Jim Queen, and Jim Queen was an interesting guy.
Yes, he was.
Athlete, and had grown up in the neighborhood, but had Southern roots, had gotten in with Southern Baptists. Mm-hmm. And then they sent him as a missionary. So that's how he was funded through them. And, but very much an open door kind of, how would you call his management style? Very improvisational, very relational and improvisational. Yes. And so we sat down with him, and rather than say, well, here's what I'd like you to do to help the church, he just gave us ideas. Mm-hmm. We were like, I'm a 19-year-old farm boy. Mm-hmm. We're like, what? What are we supposed to do here? And we ended up just starting to, for some reason, and I can't tell you exactly why. I can't tell you the difference, but for some reason, it's the same thing like your experience. Like that was home, right?
Yeah.
It was not cool. It was not pleasant. Yeah, right? Mm-hmm. But it was...
the people.
Yeah. Yeah, very interesting. Yeah. And so it ended up over the couple of years, junior and senior year at Wheaton, by my senior year, we were going down on Saturdays too. Mm-hmm. We were knocking on doors.
Yeah. Well, that's what happened to me too. My freshman year, I was working at with the mentally ill, and then that was the second semester. Yeah, and then when I was a sophomore, I actually got asked to be a Christian, one of the leaders, and Jim Queen wanted to start a tutoring program in his church. Oh, so I ended up leading the tutoring ministry for Uptown Baptist Church. And so that's when we met.
That's when
because I started going in on Saturdays with you. I would get a ride with you guys sometimes.
Riding in the van together or something, and that's how.
Well, you would drive it.
Oh, okay. I drove my green van.
Right, and I'd be in the back somewhere.
I had a very cool vehicle back in the day.
Yeah, he was cool.
A Ford panel van, and with glass pack mufflers. It had the low rumble.
Yeah, and he had
a
cool orange neon hoodie.
Right.
That he got at Farm and Fleet. Yeah, he was kind of interesting.
If we post this, I've got the photo of me standing by that van.
Yeah, I know.
People will be impressed.
I'm not sure, but
anyway, so you rode in that van with us down to Uptown. That's where we got.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I had some shag carpet in the back.
Yeah,
that was pretty cool.
And then, after graduation, then 79, I moved into Uptown, and then not knowing what I was doing, I had a BA in psych, and so I ended up working in those kind of halfway houses for minimum wage, right? And what next? You were challenged to leave Wheaton.
Yes, I'm the fourth born in my family, and all my siblings went to Wheaton, and I wanted to be different, so I was going to go somewhere else. But my dad.
That's why I liked you.
Yeah, my dad
wanted to be different.
I wanted to be different.
Yeah.
So my dad.
There's a true part of that. I'm joking, but.
Yes.
Yeah.
So my dad said, because they were missionaries in Argentina, he wanted me to be in a safe place in the U.S. So he told me he wanted me to start at Wheaton. And after that, if I wanted, I could possibly transfer. So I already had this idea in the back of my head that I would someday transfer out and go to a secular school, university or something. So my sophomore year, I also had a professor at Wheaton who really challenged us. It was a Christian education class, and he challenged us, and he said, if you don't have any non-Christian friends, you really probably should leave Wheaton and go find some. And he said that to the whole class. It was pretty amazing. And so it was like, for me, I was like, oh, we're on the same wavelength, because I already felt like that. I had one of my high school, I was in Wheaton and went to high school in Wheaton when I was a freshman in high school, and I had some friends from back then. And one of my friends came to see me in the dorm, and we just had nothing in common. She was like going in a whole different direction at that point, and I didn't know how to talk to her. And
this was a Christian friend, or kind of?
She was kind of a Christian friend, but she's gotten involved in some things. When he talked to us about how we didn't even know how to connect to people who were non-Christians or people who were different, I was like, that's me. I don't know how to do this. So I was looking into going to a different school. It was also my sophomore year. I was finished with being a Christian ministries leader, and I had to do a connection with Jim Queen. And so I went down with my leader, and I had told her that someday I wanted to live in Chicago. And so she said, you should tell Pastor Queen. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I felt very intimidated by him. He was very cool. And so she went ahead and told him. She said, Judy has this idea from since she was a very little girl that she wants to live in the city and work downtown. And so he said, well, if you want to come live here this summer, you can. You could be a part-time summer missionary and live here. And you know what? I'm an MK, and I need a place to live in the summer. I was like, what am I going to do this summer? And it just opened the door, and I was like, okay, I'll do that. And I even got a job working downtown. That was an amazing thing. And so that's how I ended up becoming part of the church also, through that.
Yes.
Conversations.
So I'm trying to remember how there was, I'm a little vague here. Now I graduated early. So like March or so, I was living in March of 79. Right. And then, but we were getting to know each other.
That was my second semester. Yeah.
That your second, so you were coming down. So we were doing some visits in the neighborhood together.
Right. It was my second year, second semester, and I was doing the tutoring ministry.
Tutoring ministry.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then maybe you joined us at the halfway houses because you were down there already. So I bet you came sometimes on Sundays.
Well, yeah, I don't.
I
Yeah.
think you did.
I mean, I just the reason I'm bringing this up is because there's
Tim Larkin was part of the Uptown.
Well, yeah, there was another. So Tim Larkin was running a basketball ministry.
He was also Hazel
at the
Wilson.
Presbyterian Church. Okay, so so there were several ministries going on together in that. But in any case, my point is that at some point I decided that I liked you. Okay.
Yeah.
And I wanted to have a relationship.
Yes.
Yeah. And it was prior to this summer thing. Okay. Because I remember when, just as you're telling me this stuff, I'm getting excited.
Okay. Well, we had a few conversations and
because my wheels are turning. Maybe
I was
maybe God is working this out.
Yeah, and he was one of those desperate people done with Wheaton without a girlfriend or a wife, potential wife. So he was kind of desperate. Yeah. So So I just kind of I didn't have a really big self-esteem about men being attracted to me, so I just kind of put it all to that. It was just because,
Yeah, well, and we don't need to spend a lot of time. That's not our focus here. But but what ended up was they rented Jim Queen rented two larger apartments for the summer.
Yes, in the same building.
And there were kids came up from Texas as summer missionaries, and then you and I were extras.
We were the part-time summer missionaries.
Right. Yeah,
because we both have full-time day jobs.
Yeah. And so then we were partners together.
Yes.
And partners meaning we would go knock on doors in the neighborhood.
Yes, because there were rules. You couldn't work alone.
Yeah, everyone had to have a partner for security reasons. Yeah.
So in order to earn our room and board, because we got free food too, it was a pretty good deal. We worked every evening and Saturdays and Sundays.
Right, we were busy.
All the time.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And back in that time, Uptown was having a lot of arson for profit. All these buildings that's gentrified now, the buildings that remain, which are many, but these old 3 flats and 6 flats had been converted into multiple units, right, per floor, and no security door. So you could just walk into a building, walk up the stairs, and knock on a door. And introduce yourself, and we're from Uptown Baptist Church, and do your kids go to Sunday school, right? That kind of thing,
right? And we also had connections already through the tutoring programs. And,
there were families that we knew.
You had already been at the church for a couple of years, so
Well, my main memory is visiting the Gonzalez kids. Down south of Montrose.
Yeah,
and
they were part of the Puerto Rican population.
Yes. Okay. And so then we did that, again, doing this daily outreach, right?
Yeah.
And getting to know some folks, so we would go hang out with them. Like there was Lane and B from, Eastern Kentucky or something, right? Yeah, just older couple, just simple white folks.
There's Maria Pagan, Miriam,
Sheila,
Daryl Clifford.
Yeah. Well, I had met Ray too.
Well, we met some characters we were right across the street from a big Catholic church that had stairs out front. We'd sit there all the time. We'd just meet people.
Right.
Some really
people everywhere.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But Ray was I remember, I think I was alone when I visited him. He was in a room on Malden there, and younger guy in his 20s, very alcoholic. Right?
I always thought he was just homeless. He actually had a place.
He had a place, yeah. And I got him some food or something, and he was so touched. And of course...
He was sweet. He started drinking when he was about 7.
Yeah.
So he was about 7 years old.
Yeah.
He was developmentally like 7. Really sweet. I could just imagine a little boy. He would have been adorable.
And he ended up, so he was involved with the church then for a few years. Because I remember in the new building, he would stand up. And we got the new building, we bought this old building, right, from the church that died in 81. We were the first wedding in June of 81. But I remember him standing up. We would have sharing time every service. And I remember him standing up, announcing how many days he'd been sober.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Until finally he relapsed and then someone beat him up in the park. He was a cranky drunk. And so unfortunately it took his life. Yeah. And so we had these kind of relationships too. Yeah. Maria, little round Puerto Rican.
Yeah.
lady,
She introduced me to Bustelo coffee.
Oh, okay.
She made great coffee. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Lots of sugar. She was diabetic.
yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, we could keep going. Lots of folks that again were precious, and it was interesting too, I guess, and looking back, is that's when we were beginning to experience the long term. You know, these were folks that weren't hearing the gospel and okay, I'm changing my life now. You know,
No,
there was a lot of back and forth, a lot of just presence being there. Yeah.
A lot of just caring for people, whatever happens, but just care for them anyway.
Right.
Because so many of them are so fragile.
Yeah. And we weren't doing the if you don't change, we're not interested in you kind of thing, which I've heard there are those that do. We were hanging in there with people. I remember Lane and B, I don't think they ever went to the church on Sunday.
Yeah, we would visit people all the time to go to the church.
And then you'd hear the whole, one of the, I think of Lane, one of these days we got to get down there. Oh, come on. Yeah, we're going this Sunday for sure. No, it never happened.
Yeah.
Right. And then Sheila, that was interesting. She was a very nice lady, living in one of the rougher places on Magnolia there. And she would be one of the ones that would say, would talk about her shame. That she felt like she couldn't go to a church because, she would be looked down on. Right. And it was before we knew about trauma and stuff. We didn't know how to interview people and so tell me your story and what happened and so forth. We were just kind of just being there and being nice, and we'd share Bible verses and pray and those kinds of things. Yeah.